Okay, so welcome back to the session two of the Future Skills Maritime FSM 2020. It's a great opportunity for me to welcome these powerful people on stage, and you will get to hear them 2 hours now live on Facebook and live on YouTube at our The Naval Connection hosting hashtags Naval Connection 2020. So thank you very much. And I would just want to read out the topic, and it is the next training of the next generation cadets and trainees. And we've had a wonderful session in the morning. We are going to have a wonderful session right now. Just a few words on the topic before I hand over to our host, Sudha. We are currently caught up in a whirlwind of chaos because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Although almost every business and professional has been affected, this has also created a new challenges that demand a fresh perspective to face and come up with dynamic solutions that benefit the world order, especially in the maritime industry. Future Skills Maritime FSM 2020 is an attempt at a global platform to ignite thought-provoking discussions that enables path-breaking ideas, especially concerning the technological demands that confront the human resources for the future maritime industry. Saying this, handing over to Sudha, who is going to introduce our participants today. Sudha.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Our second session is titled The Next Generation Cadet and Trainee, and we are honored to invite Captain Belal Ahmed as our esteemed keynote speaker to give his keynote address. Before he starts his keynote address, a profile of Captain Belal Ahmed.
Captain Belal Ahmed, Chairman, International Maritime Employers Council, IMEC. Captain Belal is the current chairman of IMEC. He is also the managing director of Western Shipping Private Limited, Singapore. Captain Belal has been serving the shipping industry for nearly 42 years, of which he was at sea for 22 years. His experience in the industry uniquely qualifies him to comment on the technical management of shipping as it is today. His worldwide experience and deep insights in global shipping are much relevant today. His experience in ship management, industrial relations, human resource development, and seafarer training are recognized globally. His involvement with IMEC provides a platform to influence decisions fundamental to ensure seafarers' rights, duty obligations, and career developments. Captain Belal is the epitome of industrial relations. His knowledge, sense of humor, and personality blends perfectly to inspire win-win outcomes during all trade negotiations. The Naval Connection proudly presents Captain Belal Ahmed as keynote speaker at the FSM 2020.
We welcome Captain Belal Ahmed now to give his keynote address. Captain Belal Ahmed, sir.
Thank you, Captain Shaukat. Good morning to those attending from Europe and Western world. Good afternoon to everyone in India and this side of the world. I have to welcome everyone on behalf of Captain Shaukat for making such an excellent arrangement that I could not believe that it has such a global reach. With the theme of this virtual conference, the future skills, before I do my keynote speech, my colleague from IMEC, Adam Lewis, will play a video that probably will set the right theme that I can later on speak on this particular issue. So Adam, if you're ready, can you play the video that we spoke about?
कोई भी लेकर नहीं आ सकते कितने लोग हैं बराबर after Bilal's address thank you and then you're going to take all the except getting nervous. Why? If you get nervous, then the format will not happen. Aram se, I'm there on stage.
I can't do anything.
Thank you, Adam. The reason we wanted to play these is I think that this session is more about technology, the future, and our main addressee, the young generation that is going to be taking over the industry in few years' time. So let me start my few words that I wanted to bring attention to what we expect. Industry transformation has always been in phases. Looking back last 40 to 50 years, I mean, I started my career in mid 70s. I have seen how the industry has completely changed from technology on board to the seafarers who manages these ships. Shipping is going through a technological revolution right before our eyes. This means those who are entering the industry must have a very different sets of skills to start with. The two major disruption that is taking place now is affecting the way we recruit, the way we train, the way we retrain, and ultimately the way we use our seafarers. These are emergence of new technologies that we have been talking about and saw in this video, and the attributes of what we call Generation Z, the newer generation who has a completely different way of working and using their thought process. Speed of technological change, as we all know, is picking up speed and expected to be faster and faster, as we saw in that video. The traditional mode of training cadet has always been and still is a 4-year program, and this usually will be followed by more training and more training, not only during their cadet phase but throughout the career at sea. We believe with the expected changes in the technology with regard to the aspect of the ship, the way the ships are built, we need to train cadets and future officers with a much increased degree of flexibility. The term using all available means is taking a greater significance as we enter the fourth industrial revolution. I think almost every country is talking about how to go about on this path. A junior officer today is expected to make decisions based on a large amount of information and data presented in front of him. This may be EGDIS data on the bridge for a junior officer or a third officer, or a data in the engine control room on the MOP or on a computer screen that a junior engineer can see. What used to be a good IT skill or a knowledge 10 years ago, I mean, we would have thought that knowing Microsoft Office is like an excellent IT knowledge. This is no longer considered even as a basic knowledge, because today's young generation, they have much more knowledge to start with. Skill needed to operate ships with new technology will require seafarer with better skill to start with, and these seafarers can be trained to learn. We cannot have seafarers joining today who will be unable to absorb the knowledge and the technology that they need to absorb to do the basic operation of the ships. How the future generation will lead will probably be different from how we were led. I mean, many of us will remember when we joined the ship, we are not even allowed to go near the bridge. I think today we have cadets joining the ship, and from the day one, we need them to be around wherever they need to be. That includes bridge or engine control room or wherever there are control systems. So they have a very different idea on what the leadership is, meaning they actually do not expect us to be the old style leader. And that is not what they expect from us. Skill set for new generation that we bring on board will be different. So their expectations will be different. Many of seafarers, the senior guys now on board, I do get feedback. This is a challenge for them, that the newer generation, when they sit in front of the computers, they are much faster, but they are not probably as able on deck. So if you go by the old style and ask them to be on deck and never come in front of the control room, then they won't be able to perform their job. So I believe in this particular case, those of us who are on board leading our newer generation will probably need to make compromises and make changes to the method that we use to train the newer boys and the girls who are coming on board as a cadet or as a junior officer. For many years, we have been comparing shipping to other industry, especially with the airline industry, and how cool and methodical and structured they are. I think with the technology that is being introduced in the shipping, the barriers between the two industries are coming closer and closer. When the airline was using simulators to train their pilots, we couldn't even imagine that in the shipping industry. But today, as you can see, so much of training is done on simulators that the newer cadets do not have to do as much sea time in order to get the similar experience on ship maneuver, navigation, engine systems, operations, and whatever that comes on board. And we all today talk about environment related issues. I believe that the newer generation, they are more green and environment centric people, and they understand how important it is to safeguard the environment. So I think when they come on board, that they will represent the future and they will prioritize automatically to preserve the environment. Many of us from the older generation, in the beginning, we saw environment was not something as a priority, but now we realize how important it is, and we are getting into the act. So I believe that with the newer generation that is coming on board, this will be priority automatically. We don't have to work on that, but probably what they will be asking for is how much better we can do to protect our environment. And going back to talking a little bit more about environment, today's shipping we know is so heavily regulated. It is cleaner, much better than when many of us started our career at sea. These will continue to evolve. The skills required for new generation seafarers will bring these to a much higher level. From today, we are talking of reduction of different emissions, CO2, SOx, NOx, but then we have started talking about a zero emission environment and the climate. I think the newer generation that we bring today to the industry will be aiming for that, a zero emission industry that will safeguard the planet Earth. One of the things that I have learned from many of the young cadets that we introduce every year, why do they join sea? And this question comes of many webinars, many seminars, many face-to-face discussions. Some just say, sir, I just need a good job, and this is the best one that I have filtered out. But there are people, boys, who come to say, I think going to sea is a challenge, and I have done enough background check to take it as a challenge and do better. And these are the boys that actually make changes to anywhere they go. But I think for the shipping, this is very, very, very clear. And that is why you have leaders out of many. But those people that is joining today, the challenges will be much, much greater and much, much bigger. And that obviously is technology to do the job, and how do we protect the environment while still bringing goods from one place to another. Obviously, among all these, there will be some that might be considering this as a 9-to-5 job, which it is not. And many boys, they do leave career at sea because of this thought process did not work out for them. So this is a challenging profession, and today I hope that during this session we can bring up this discussion. I was told by Captain Shaukat that he was encouraged to see a lot of young boys have registered to listen to us, and I hope we can address this part, that what do they actually expect when they would like to join the sea, and what will they actually see. Before I end, I want to bring something that many of younger generation probably wouldn't remember. In the early 80s, there was a severe recession that took hold of globally. I think a third of the world shipping, or even more, was just simply laid up. Thousands of seafarers had to just disappear from the industry and find another job, and they never came back. And in order to replace those lost seafarers, industry had to spend at least 3 or 4 generations to get those numbers back. Today we are in the middle of another crisis. There are a lot of ships not trading, and the last thing we would like to see, that the seafarers numbers are reduced. If that happens, again the industry will have problems filling up those positions. So one of the things I would like to see today, that we bring up this subject and tell the younger boys and the girls who are attending today's seminar that it is a cyclical industry. It works up and down, and never to get disheartened that this job will never come back when there is a trade related or today's COVID related crisis and a reduction in trade. When we carry 90% of the world commodities, this is a lifeline for world trade and economy. So we are all proud that we are part of this industry, but those of you who are joining as a new cadet, in the industry never give up, because this is an industry that at times will go down, but most of the time it will stay up. I think the panel discussion that is arranged after my speech will be headed by Captain Tandon. He is more experienced than me, more knowledgeable than me. He is a guardian that we all respect. I hope he will bring up some challenging questions, not only to the panelists, but also those who are attending today will give us some questions that we can address issues. That is the focus of today. So I believe as much as today's, as Captain Shaukat has said, it is future skill related discussion, but I think shipping is not just skill and technology, which obviously is the main focus today, but there are human relations, mental health issues. How do you stay long at sea that you don't get disheartened today, and we can provide some advice to whoever is attending today. Once again, I wish to thank Captain Shaukat for attending such an excellent global event. Thank you very much. I wish to hand over to Sudha, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Captain Belal. We are really honored to have you as our keynote speaker. Thank you very much for that. It was an inspiring and amazing speech. We request you to kindly stay back to join the panel for a question and answer session at the end. Thank you. I now request our esteemed moderator for the session, Captain Rajesh Tandon, to initiate the discussion and the session titled Rethinking Maritime Education. Before I hand over the session to Captain Tandon, we take a few minutes to introduce our panelists who are highly accomplished and leading professionals of the maritime world. Thank you so much. We have a few profiles.
Captain Rajesh Tandon, Director, Industrial Relations V Group and former Chairman IMEC. Captain Tandon is an alumnus of 1973-75 batch of the T.S. Rajendra. He served at sea initially with the Shipping Corporation of India and then with V-Ships specializing on tankers, VLCC and VLOO carriers. Captain Tandon came ashore in 1991 with V-Ships and set up the V-Ships office in India in 1997 as the Managing Director and is currently serving as Global Director for V Group Limited, handling industrial relations and seafarer development. He has served as Chairman of IMEC from 2014 until 2019. He has also been a member of the Ship Owners Delegation to ILO's Special Tripartite Committee for MLC SID and Minimum Wage Deliberations at Geneva. He has been a member of the National Shipping Board. He is a founder member of the Nautical Institute India Branch 1993. He is a trustee of Seafarers Provident Fund Organization, the Maritime Floating Staff Welfare Trust and NUSI ITF Trust for Indian Seafarers. His efforts have been recognized by the Indian and international maritime community and has been felicitated by several industry bodies and associations globally. He was conferred the Varuna Award, the highest personal award in maritime in 2018, for his sustained and outstanding contribution to the maritime sector. Rajesh Tandon is like Mount Everest in the industry. Everyone looks up to him and everyone wishes to scale his heights. The Naval Connection proudly presents Kathryn Nielsen, Director, Merchant Navy Training Board, UK Chamber of Shipping. Kathryn started her career as a teacher and spent much of her early years in training and skill development. In 2011, she branched off into maritime training, and for 7 years she served the Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines as their safety and compliance officer, responsible for UK's fleet certification and compliance and international cadet training programs. She took over the responsibilities of the Merchant Navy Training Board as director in August 2017 and is responsible for the overall operation overseeing and facilitating its technical work, new entrant training programs, careers promotion strategy, and managing the charitable work of the Maritime Educational Foundation. Kathryn Nielsen is like sunshine to the maritime industry. She illuminates whichever sphere she touches. The Naval Connection proudly presents Kathryn Nielsen at the FSM 2020. Adam Lewis, Head of Operations and Training, International Maritime Employers Council, IMEC. Adam originally joined the shipping industry as a deck cadet with Cunard Line. After graduating, he commenced his career ashore, initially as an operator charterer in the short sea shipping trade, and then within the ISM and ISPS department of a leading super yacht company. Adam joined IMEC in 2010, where he heads the training department. He is predominantly responsible for the management of the IMEC Cadet and Engine Rating programs in the Philippines, which collectively have around 800 students under training. He is also responsible for looking at future skill requirements of the maritime workforce. Adam holds a BSc Honours in Merchant Ship Operations from Southampton Solent University and is currently studying for an Executive MBA from the University of Winchester. The Naval Connection is proud to host Adam Lewis as speaker at the FSM 2020. Captain Sankalp Shukla, Director, Bernhard Schultz Ship Management. Captain Sankalp Shukla joined Bernhard Schultz, formerly known as Eurasia, as cadet in 1995. He got command as master in 2007 and shifted ashore in the same year to the Chennai office. After acquiring a degree in international shipping, logistics, supply chain management and port policies, Captain Shukla rejoined the BSM as Marine Superintendent in 2009. He was promoted to Crew Manager in 2010, then to Deputy Director and Director in 2014. He is the Vice Chairman of the Foreign Owners Representatives and Ship Managers Association FOSMA, General Secretary MAPS, Court Member of IMU, Member of NUSI ITF Trust, and board member of RBSC. Captain Shukla brings young and creative ideas to the maritime industry and is a great mentor to students and seafarers from all over India. The Naval Connection proudly presents Captain Sankalp Shukla as speaker at the FSM 2020.
Rorotea Zek, Global Co-Chair, Young Transport Workers Committee, International Transport Workers Federation, ITF. Rorotea Zek has been working with the Seafarers Union of Croatia, SUC, since 2014. She holds an MSc in law, and prior to joining the SUC, she practiced law, including labor law. Presently, she is a legal advisor and is also responsible for international relations. Additionally, she coordinates young seafarers' activities with special emphasis on their continuous education. She is also involved in activities of national and international legislation for seafarers, including relations with ILO and IMO. Furthermore, she coordinates activities on cases of crimes involving seafarers. Since 2015, she represents young transport workers in the ITF Seafarers section of the Young Transport Workers Committee, and in November 2018, she was elected co-chair of the committee. She is also co-chair of the ITF Sustainable Transport Working Group that works on developing ITF Sustainable Transport Policy after COVID-19. She's a member of the working group of ITF's Career Paths and Skills Development, and with special emphasis on the education of young seafarers, especially their first work experience on board ships. The Naval Connection proudly presents Rorotea as speaker at the FSM 2020. May I request Captain Tandon to kindly take over the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sudha. I'd like to start by thanking the Naval Connection and Shaukat for this particular fantastic initiative and bringing together a topical subject that is so necessary to be deliberated and dealt with in a conclusive manner. I'd also like to thank Sudha for the very humbling introduction, and as well Belal. I think you were taking a mickey at me when you were saying all those things, but thank you anyway. To come to the subject of the panel discussion today, the next generation of cadets and trainees, I'd like to put in context the concept what we're talking here. Shipping is the oldest mode of transportation known to mankind and dates back to times immemorial. From simple floating logs being paddled by the forefathers of human life, the industry has undergone a sea change. The advent of digitization over the last 2 decades or so has brought about unprecedented changes in our daily lives. The entire world is witnessing a transformation in the way we conduct our business. The shipping industry is no different. You know, if I cast my mind back when I told my children who are now 30 years or so, they do not believe them when I tell them that the only mode of communication with the family whilst I was sailing at sea was writing letters and receiving them from port to port. They are aghast when I tell them that the first time I ever saw a television, I was 17 years old. Well, back to the subject here. Automation is being introduced in leaps and bounds, and the primary objective is to improve efficiencies and costs. Automated ships are here to stay and will increase in coming time. The pundits are predicting that the demand for low-skilled worker, and I put the word low-skilled worker, seafarers, in parenthesis, will decrease in quick time, and this number can fall down to even 22%, and that the lower and middle skilled workers will be first replaced by automation. This is not what I'm saying. This is what I have read in the concept paper that was produced. I will flag this term, the low skilled worker, for the moment and park it on the side, and I will invite further comment on this from our panelists. The global supply and demand for seafarers has been a hot topic over the last few years, in fact, over a few decades. And the role of the seafarer in the future is an equally pressing question. Digitalization is bringing a wave of change, and predicting the future skill set required by the seafarers has sparked sufficient debate. As was, I think, said in Adam's video that he showed, people today, the youngsters today, we don't even know, the jobs have not yet been invented that they will become proficient at when they grow up in 10 or 15 years' time. Now, with this background, I have a few questions that I will put on the table to be taken up, and I'm sure most of these questions that I've got will be sufficiently addressed in one or the other panelists' submissions when they make their comments. Does modernization mean only digitization? Are we referring only to safety of navigation and machinery operations? What about seamanship, for example? And that's a question that will come up later on. What are the key driving factors for developing the next generation seafarer? And who, in our current context of shipboard jobs, are these so-called low-skilled workers that are at threat of being made redundant? While there can be no blanket approach to answering these questions in the maritime industry, technology is transforming how work gets done, and we might consider the role of a seafarer changing through evolution rather than revolution. At this stage, I will stop and I will invite the prolific luminaries to share their views one at a time. I would first like to invite Mr. Adam Lewis, my colleague at IMEC, and I have had the pleasure of working with him extremely closely during my term as chairman from 2014 to 2019. He is an authority on young cadet training programs and initiatives and has introduced several new dynamic out-of-the-box efforts to grow the cadet program in the Philippines. So over to you, Adam.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Rajesh, and my thanks also to Naval Connection for inviting me to speak today. I wanted to start off really my bit of this panel discussion by zooming out and looking at the workplace of the future before we start to look in detail about cadet training and digitalization. And I'm not just talking about things like automation on board here. I really want to zoom out and look at the workplace as a whole. And as we know, there's a lot of change coming. And there's a wonderful acronym for this, which is called VUCA, which stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And it's a whole thing about how we know there's going to be a lot of change coming. Everything's going to be very fast-paced. Leaders of the future are going to have to be able to make decisions based on this fast pace of information without necessarily knowing the full facts. And that means quite a lot for us, because as we start to enter this VUCA world, like I say, there's a lot more information and a lot more threats. So we're already starting to see this in the maritime world. As we introduce more technology at an extremely fast pace, all of a sudden seafarers have got to know not just about anchoring, but about things like cybersecurity. So the whole sort of skills set for your average mariner is changing so rapidly. Another big element of it is innovation. And that's not necessarily a word that's associated with seafarers, but I think as we enter the future is something that we're going to have to align seafarers training with. And basically what I'm saying is maritime training is not going to set the skills of the future. Now, let me use an example of a non-maritime example here. And let's take the example of COVID. So about 12 months ago,
Shukla, we are getting a lot of echo in the sound. I think there are two devices on at one location. Can you please make sure that one is switched off, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Rajesh. So if I use the example of COVID, about 12 months ago, there was this huge outbreak. And this is a wonderful example of how the world used VUCA. Because even though we knew there was a potential of an outbreak, all the scientists didn't know what the strain looked like and they didn't know how to solve it. And it was only because they innovated, they collaborated, that they've now come up with, hopefully, a good vaccine. And even industry leaders, we had to innovate. We had to change the world which we work in. And this online conference is an example. We could have said, we can't meet physically, let's leave it for a year. But we didn't. We found new ways of meeting and collaborating. And this is what we need these young people to do in the future. So finally, let's all bring this back to maritime. And what does this mean? Well, like the video said, and like Rajesh has alluded to, we don't know what we're training young people up for yet. And for me, this is an extremely exciting opportunity because we can give them the basic skills and we can let them develop the industry for the future. I used this example in a conference a couple of days ago, and it's a nice example, I think. My 3-year-old son for Christmas is getting quite an elaborate tablet. And the reason he's doing that is because under the national curriculum, at age 4, he will start coding. And you know, that's all exciting. But the thing is, we actually don't know why he's coding. He doesn't know why he's coding yet because his future career doesn't exist yet, statistically. So if we put this into a maritime situation, educational system, if you like, we need to make sure that our educational system at the cadet level is robust enough that whatever we train these young people for, they're not going to have a skills gap in the future. They're going to be able to keep changing, keep adapting, and meet the challenges of the future. So I think my final take point before we go into the discussion is it's going to be uncomfortable. We need to start dropping tradition, and we need to start looking at what other industries are doing and perhaps adopt those for maritime education. So thank you.
Thank you, Adam, for giving this perspective. I for one, heard the term VUCA for the first time, so now I've got something to go back onto Google and ask Google what VUCA is all about, and it's very interesting. It's also very interesting to hear about your 3-year-old son who's getting a tablet and he's going to start doing coding. Recently, while I've been homebound under this pandemic, I've also been seeing a lot of advertisements on our television, on preceding Netflix and things like that I'm watching, that they are actually having online coding sessions for youngsters below the age of 6. So now it gets it. So the whole world is preparing for that. And I thought these guys were being innovative here. But thanks for that, Adam. Which brings me on to the next panelist, Kathryn. I haven't had the pleasure of working with you in the past, but I think we made up for that in the quick 15 minutes that we had before we started. But having said that, we've heard of you from my colleagues, not least Belal, who's always has high praise for the way you have interacted with him. So without further ado, over to you, Kathryn.
Thank you so much, Captain Rajesh. That's very kind. And thank you very much to the Naval Connection for inviting me to be part of this panel. I'm honoured because it's something that's very close to my heart. Seafarer education and training for the future is something that I'm really passionate about, and we're working very hard in the United Kingdom to work and set standards on a daily basis. So thank you. I really wanted to talk to everybody today about what our challenges are, because we have many. And the one that's highlighted, I think, most frequently is the one that Adam's just mentioned. How on earth do we train our seafarers for jobs that don't yet exist? That is a massive challenge. So what we have to look at what we have now. And, what transferable skills can we develop in our seafarers that will enable them to compete in a global market? Because that's another very important aspect of the work that we do. We don't just want to train these cadets, get them to their first officer job and then say, thank you very much, hasta la vista, goodbye. We want to make sure that they have a career from this. We want to make sure that their career path is fixed and that they know the direction they're heading. And that's one question that a lot of the cadets ask before they venture on a career in maritime, is very much along the lines of, where can I go with this? I don't want to stay at sea for the rest of my life. What options do I have available to me? So we take a great deal of pride in being able to give some really clear routes into maritime education. And we're always developing new courses just to give everybody, we've got lots of multiple entry routes. And that's the most important thing, because we have a mixed ability who apply for these jobs. And it's very important that we maintain that. So how can we equip our seafarers with the skills to enable them to move freely within sectors, within industries, and safely from ship to shore when the time comes and they don't want to be at sea anymore? We're seeing a significant shift away from careers at sea. People want to train, they want to get the experience at sea, which is absolutely invaluable, but they want the ability to be able to move into a shore position. And I see the development of new technology, which is happening very, very quickly. I see that as an added advantage for those people who want to come ashore. There are going to be far more positions available, but the key here is we still need to make sure these seafarers have the right skills and seafaring skills. We should never think that just because we're going to be automated, and it certainly won't be fully automated, but if we're going to be automated in some way, we're still going to need seafarers to be able to understand the operation of a vessel. So those are some of the things that we asked ourselves when we started looking at a seafarer cadet review. So I guess, we then went on to our stakeholders. We've got many stakeholders around the MNTB board table. We've got our shipping companies, we've got our cadets, and we've also got our training providers, so the colleges and universities in the UK that deliver that education to those students. So we asked them, particularly the shipping companies, because after all, they're the ones that are going to be employing our future seafarers. So we asked them what the future of seafarer training would look like for them. And they came back with a very clear and distinct list of wishful things that they want. Now, some of it we're already doing, but some of it we can do much better at. So, for example, the first thing was they still want all of their seafarers to have the traditional seafaring skills, ship handling, etc. And I think that is extremely important, because no matter what direction autonomy goes, it still needs to be done. They want their seafarers to have the ability to manage a team, to be able to communicate, to be able to reason, to motivate, to empathize and support. And that's none clearer than now when, senior leadership styles are changing. They have to adapt. On board ship, there's huge hierarchical situations going on, and that's very important in that shipboard environment. But when they move off the ship, you can't maintain that hierarchical status because it just doesn't work, and it's been proven not to work. So we want to give them the ability to be flexible. I think that the ability to lead diverse teams, cultural differences, background differences, diversity itself, and gender diversity particularly, because we're seeing a lot more women coming into the industry. Still not enough, in my opinion, but we're certainly seeing enough of the challenges that the women are facing while they're on board. And that's very important. Our future leaders and our future officers have a good understanding of those challenges. They've got to be able to problem solve, to analyze, to think on their feet. And there's never been a better time to build on cognitive skills. And that is one of the questions that we were asking the shipping companies. What are those skills? New technology, they've got to have the ability to adapt to new technology, because whether we like it or not, things are changing rapidly and will continue to do so. So they have to be on the ball, they have to be able to learn and to share that information to the teams that they're working with. One of the most important things for me at this moment in time, I think particularly with COVID, we're seeing a lot of seafarers struggling with mental well-being purely and simply because of the length of time they're remaining on board their vessels. It's very, very challenging. We've all suffered. I've suffered being locked in at home and not being able to see my family and my friends. I think everybody has at some point during this lockdown and this whole COVID catastrophe. But I think we need to make sure that, and we're doing quite a lot of work on this in the UK, as are other people worldwide, which is great to see. But the seafarer of the future really does have to have a good grasp of mental well-being issues and how to tackle that, and how to teach people and how to tackle that. And I'm not talking about becoming psychologists. I'm talking about having a general awareness and being able to direct these people who do have an issue to the right person. We need to make sure, and Adam's already touched on this, we need to make sure that we have better digital skills, cybersecurity, the risks involved in cybersecurity, particularly when we're going more digital environment. That is something that we will need to really focus on. And I know there's lots of people out there already doing a lot of work on cybersecurity, and there's lots of courses. Companies are really investing time and money into teaching their seafarers and their crew about the risks of cybersecurity, because it's becoming much, much easier for cyber attacks to happen. And we're seeing, incidences of this happening more and more frequently, which is rather scary and a little disturbing. So that's another string to the bow of a seafarer. They need to be fully aware of all those issues. I think understanding the connection between financial consequences and an impact on a business, we need to make sure that they understand that, because if you're a new seafarer coming into the world of business on board a vessel, working for a company, you need to understand those connections and the impact and the competitive advantage some actions have on the business and its development. And that's another thing that we need to start looking at. Should we be giving our seafarers better business skills, business acumen? The environment, Adam's talked about the environment. We have to make sure that is absolutely up there with a list of priorities on awareness, because, when you are at sea, it's all about the environment and the pollution of the environment. So having a grasp and an understanding of what the business is doing to the environment is extremely critical. And another one right up there, and they all seem to be extremely important, is safety culture. Safety is not just the culture of one individual and the responsibility of one individual. It's about getting everybody to pick up on things as they're wandering around the ship. It's really, really important. And there are many, many, many great, lots of work going on out there about safety culture and how to promote that. And that's one thing that the cadets do right from the word go, is they're completely and utterly aware of all of those scenarios that could happen on board and what they can do about it. So we're very, very keen on building on that. So these are the top skills that shipping companies are asking from their seafarers. And I think that this has given us a really good handle on where we go next. Now, they're all what they call core skills and meta skills. And they're not just skills that we can sit in a classroom and learn. They are learnt right from the word go. So when we're in reception class in a junior or primary school, learning to read and write, all of these meta skills are being built into that learning. So what we have to do is we have to make sure that those meta skills are built right through in our entire stage of learning. We never stop learning, no matter how old we are. And we're constantly being made aware of those meta skills within the work that we do. And it's important that we carry on that way of thinking, because that's what's going to make our really good seafarers. And you know, I'm really doing a lot of work with our colleges and universities on the meta skills part. And we're trying to give really good examples of how we can encourage students to develop those skills. And I think during the COVID crisis, when many of those students started working at home because of online learning, the trend was moving from face to face because it was impossible to go into college or university. We moved them into their homes and they learned online. Now, what that's giving them is it's giving them the ability to develop those meta skills more, because they can then learn to have self-discipline. They learn their communicative skills. There are many, many skills that develops. So in some ways, this COVID crisis has helped to develop some of those skills, which has been a huge advantage. So what do we need to do now? And I think for me, we need to, and that's the MNTB, we need to work far more closely with our shipping companies to look at how technology is advancing. And we need to make sure that we stay ahead of the trend and make sure that, we can't do the training, we can't develop those training programs, but we can encourage the companies to develop those training programs for those new pieces of equipment that are put in, because it's such a rapid change and we don't want to be left behind, and we don't want our seafarers to be left behind. Keeping up with regulatory changes is very important, but we all know how slow STCW is to change, and that's always been the case, and it's always been a headache. But I don't think that should stop us from developing our own training. Non-STCW training is just as important. You know, STCW, dare I say it, is a basic standard. So we need to get much better at thinking out of the box and developing the things that really matter over and above STCW. So this is just a few points that's given maybe some food for thought in today's discussion. I'm really looking forward to having a more in-depth discussion on some of the points that I've raised, and I hope that other people will send in their questions. And I'm really looking forward to discussing that further. Thank you, Captain Belal.
Thank you, Kathryn. Thank you. That was very, very insightful and impressive. I will like to, invite further questions, and when we start on the meta skills aspects, and basically take on board what you mentioned about the STCW being a minimum standard, which is for the regulatory, which becomes the datum which everybody should build upon. By no means should it become the ultimate standard, and each company should be developing their own non-STCW and skill improvement or value addition training, as you may call it. Based on what the education levels at primary and secondary level that you alluded to, I think there should be what you're saying, or what I understood you are saying, is that we need to have some sort of an enabling provision introduced there, so that the seafarers who join our industry, there are enabling provisions for them to absorb the possible future changes that may come along. You dwelled upon environment and safety, and all very, very important aspects. Environment, because what we want to leave behind for our next generation of children and grandchildren is something which is tenable, where they can live and survive, as well as safety is, very important for their own personal existence and their teamwork. But so thank you, Kathryn, for that one. We now move on to Dorothy. I have seen Dorothy sitting at the IBF meetings, and I used to always wonder what role she's playing there, sitting next to Vladimir Svalina and the other colleagues from Croatia. Now it all falls into place that she's a lawyer, and she used to be telling them everything, what I used to be speaking, leading the ship owners regulation. This is right, this is not right. I think I'll take you up at the next meeting when we meet at the IBF. So without further ado, over to you, Dorothy. Let's hear from you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Rajesh. And hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, because we are all in different time zones, unfortunately. First of all, I would like to thank the Naval Connection for organizing this great event. with many relevant sessions for the future of the maritime industry. And also, I would like to share my appreciation for inviting me to participate and allowing me to share my views on this, in my opinion, really crucial topic. I will start with saying that today, especially during this COVID-19 crisis, we face many different problems related to seafarers. Seafarers are facing many different problems, and especially young seafarers or cadets and trainees. And those problems are, for example, crew change crisis, which is really, really hitting hard seafarers, the fatigue, the impossibility to find good jobs, especially for young students, because we all know that they need to find their first employment. And especially during the last year, it became almost impossible. However, in addition to these so-called usual problems, because we face them not only in the COVID-19 crisis, but we face them even before, we have to think about the future of work, the automated ships, and the challenges we are expecting in the near future. As I said, it seems quite important to imagine our lives in times when automation starts to shape whatever we do, particularly our workplaces, with all the benefits, but also with many drawbacks. And my colleagues, previous speakers, already tackled on that. But what the future of work will look like, as they already said, is something we don't know. But this is one of the most critical questions that, well, all workers, but especially seafarers or young seafarers and future seafarers are facing today. And this future of work is approaching really fast. Today, it is quite easily to see the considerable differences between ships built 30 years ago and state-of-the-art ships today. I haven't seen those 30 years ago, but I heard many, many stories. And one of probably the most attractive change is a change in the number of crew members and their scope of work. As I heard, and I think my colleagues could confirm that, ships used to have 35 or 40 crew members. And today we can find many large, even ultra-large vessels with less than 20 crew members. And this is also the consequence of the technology and changes we are facing in the last few decades. Being the part of the big global transport federation, these subjects are at the utmost importance for the ITF. And for all those involved, it is quite clear that the impact of new technologies on lives of all transport workers already is, but will be huge. And there is no doubt that seafarers, and especially young seafarers and future seafarers, will be struck even more. I have to use this opportunity to mention several recently conducted studies dealing with technologies that will be introduced in global transport in the following years. But I would like to mention in particular the study made by the World Maritime University on automation, technology, and employment, future of work. This research identified 6 main factors that can influence the adoption of new technologies. And when they say influence, it means to accelerate or to delay the adoption of particular technology. And those factors are technology feasibility, economic benefits, regulation and governance, social acceptance, knowledge and skills, and labor market dynamics. According to this study, the effects of technology and automation will, and I think we already heard that, most likely impact low and medium scale jobs. And many young seafarers might be among those who will be impacted by these changes. But on the other hand, it is essential to have in mind that introducing these new technologies is a process. For example, the research mentioned above predicts that in 2040 there will be no more than 15% of ships with human supervision. And it also predicts that old-fashioned seafarers could be replaced with seafarers with some new skills, mostly digital skills, software engineering, as well as green skills. However, traditional maritime competencies will still be needed. This means that for the time being, we still have enough time to prepare for forthcoming challenges. From the union perspective, from workers' perspective or seafarers' perspective, it is essential to recognize the potential impact of the technology, in particular those that can significantly disrupt existing relations, and prepare ourselves to the new challenges that we are all facing already today. Now, the question how to tackle the future of work is the question we can hear quite often lately. In my opinion, raising awareness for the effects of the technology in everyday life is crucial, as well as intensive dialogues between all stakeholders. The discussions like this are important so we all can see or discuss and talk and share our opinions and views on what the future might look like. We also need to make sure that national strategies, national policies are addressed in the way that the labor rights of all seafarers are protected. Finally, education and training that will help seafarers to adapt new skills needed in new circumstances are crucial. Guidance for seafarers to prepare for ever-changing work and workplace requirements is of particular importance. Workers must be able to adapt to the future economy, including effects of digitalization, artificial intelligence, and robotization. Adoption of new skills, we discussed today, required in the future working environment is crucial for seafarers to remain competitive, employed, and employable. So to conclude, technological innovations are not something new. These processes are already underway in many segments, and they will continue to impact the transport and other industries, as well as all workers, with special emphasis on young workers and young seafarers or future seafarers. We need to ensure gradual changes resulting with the shift of the workforce, but not with a labor reduction. Consequently, securing upskilling and reskilling of young seafarers to transfer them to equally valued or preferably higher value jobs should be one of our priorities. And let me end this presentation by quoting Albert Einstein, who once said, "It has become appallingly obvious that our technology has exceeded our humanity." And I think it just started. However, if we ensure that future seafarers are prepared for these challenges, maintaining or even improving their present status as the key workers, the force that transports more than 80% of world trade, including vital medical supplies, food, and other necessary goods, can be safely safeguarded. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. That was really very, very interesting, and to get the perspective from the seafarers' side. We see, I've heard some of your other colleagues, Stephen Cotton, etc., speak on the autonomous ships, etc. So I think it's re-endorsing what he had started off when I last heard him. I'll come back to that when I ask you the question. Last but not the least, I'd like to invite Captain Sankalp Shukla. He is my colleague and one of the brightest stars, if I can say that, for the Indian maritime industry. I think when Belal, you and I retire, I think the industry will be in good hands, hearing all these people. So without further ado, over to you, Sankalp. Your microphone is muted, Sankalp. Sankalp, your microphone.
Yeah, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. I would first like to thank Shaukat and Naval Connections to have me as a speaker, especially where the moderator, Captain Tandon, is my guru. So thank you, Shaukat, for that. Thank you for choosing the right slot for me. Now, when it comes to technology, it brings me to two experiences of my life. One was back in 1997 when I was a cadet on board a ship. The chief officer calls me and bosun and he says, stores have come. And there's one box that is very, very important. Make sure that you all hand carry it, do not sling it, hand carry it and bring it up to the pilot cabin and leave it there. We didn't know what it was. We went, picked up the box, went and kept it in the pilot cabin over there. Next couple of days, there's a lot of buzz going on. Electrical officer is very busy. He's in the pilot cabin. And then one day, chief officer calls me, third officer and second officer, and he's like, any of you heard of this thing called a computer? We said, yes, of course, we all have heard of computers. Have any one of you worked on a computer? So I so happened to have computer science as a subject that I did in my 11th and 12th standard. So I said, yes, sir, I've done computer science. He says, well, captain wants to meet you. So I go to the captain's cabin and I'm like, sir, you wanted to meet me? So he says, lad, I believe you know how to work this box that has come. So I said, yes, you mean a computer? He says, yes. I said, yes, sir, I did computer science in my 11th and 12th. He said, you know what, lad, from now onwards, every day from 4 to 6, you will sit and teach us how to use this box. So for the remaining part of my contract, I was off deck work at around 3:30, would have a shower, be at the pilot cabin by 4. 4 to 6, show them how to work the computer, and I was off after that. So it was a blessing in disguise. The second experience of technology was when I was promoted to the rank of second officer, and I was joining my first ship in Hong Kong, a container ship. And in Hong Kong, there were only 40 moves of containers. So I was going up the gangway. There was a person coming down the gangway, and he's like, "Are you second officer Sankalp?" I said, "Yes." So he says, "These are your handover notes. The ship is going to sail in the next half an hour. I put the passage plan on bridge. This is all I can hand over. I need to go to the immigrations right now." I enter the bridge. The bridge vaguely looked like a cockpit of an airline or something like that. And I saw 4 screens there. I said, very good. The ship has got 4 radars. The third mate was hanging around over there. So I said, how come the ship has got 4 radars? What is the need for that? I said, no. 2 are radars, 2 are EGDIS. And I literally fainted over there because I had heard about EGDIS, but I'd never worked on an EGDIS, let alone be a second mate on promotion who's supposed to use the EGDIS. So these are the 2 memories of technology changes that I had on board the ships, which is nowhere compared to what is happening now. So in my view, in seeing the transformation of the shipping industry in this era of fast changing technology in the maritime industry will have a direct impact to the future skills of mariners. This will bring about an obvious change in the training and the skill set of the cadets and trainees that we will induct in the future. One of the skill sets that would be looked into is the adaptation and the understanding of the technology in use. While saying this, we cannot undermine the importance of the basic, whether it be nautical or engineering, basic skills that are required by seafarers. Technology has its limitations, and understanding of this limitations is very, very vital for the safe operations of ships. Therefore, the future cadets and trainees will need to be ready to deal with both the future and the traditional skills of shipping. One of the things that Captain Tandon had brought about in his initial questions, what happens to seamanship? Seamanship can never disappear. That is the basic skill that is required by a seafarer, and that will be required at all costs. There will be a continual change in the standards and the type of training. This will include virtual and augmented reality based simulator training, and our cadets will require to adapt to this type of training also. Also, a very important fact and understanding are the importance of cybersecurity, given the fact that the automation on board ships will be much more advanced. All in all, the future cadets and trainees have a tall order in front of them, and it would be rather important to have very robust aptitude testing prior shortlisting of the future cadets and trainees. So the future of the maritime industry is going to be a healthy mix of technology, digitalization, and traditional skills. Something that we were not used to, something that even we would have to learn to explain to our seafarers how this is going forward. And for understanding that, we need to see that the next breed of seafarers, when they are being selected in a methodological manner. Aptitude testing is something that we have started fairly recently, and it has worked well. In today's social climate, the generation Z that we are talking about, where they want to be more socially connected, and being out at sea, there are limitations to actually be socially connected. This aptitude testing has been worthwhile. So all I have to say is that the future of shipping is not only technology, it is not only digitalization, but the traditional methods of shipping, of seamanship, need to continue, will have to continue, and we need to make sure that our future cadets are also trained in that, not only trained in technology. So I would take no further time over here. I thank everybody to have me here as a speaker, and thank you that I got this opportunity in front of you all to bring this forward. Thank you, Captain Tandon.
Thank you, Sankalp. And once again, I thank all the panelists for their very insightful and, setting the scene for the panel discussion that will, or the questions that will start. So in keeping with the directives that have been provided to me by Shaukat, and he's been a colleague at work as well, so I have to follow what he says, otherwise he can be very, very, he will get stuck on it and he might just interfere over here and say, Captain Tandon, this is not what we were supposed to do. So staying with the pattern of what we've been asked to do, I will go around the room and ask one question based on what the presentations have been made. And my first question goes to Adam. Adam, as we've seen in the IMEC meetings, as well as some of the people who are in the manning side of the operation, who always are complaining that the technical operators are whine about the quality of the current seafarer, as if it's fashionable to say so that the seafarers are no good. You are closely involved with the running of an extremely successful cadet program for IMEC membership in Philippines. From your experience, can you tell the audience if we are suffering from a shallow talent pool at entry level? Is there an expectation gap in what we induct and what the operators need? And what should we be doing going forward? Apart from the digitization aspect of the future, I'm talking about the immediate future. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rajesh. And I think that's a brilliant question, actually. And my initial answer is going to be one that might not be very popular. And that is that I think the young people we're recruiting now are the best quality candidates we've ever had in the industry. I mean, just look what's happened in the COVID pandemic. We've asked basically kids as young as primary school to get out of school environment, go home and start doing their syllabus on their own. It was something we would only ask university students to do before 2020. And these kids have done it. They've used technology and they've taught themselves and they've succeeded. So that just shows the quality of candidates we got coming through. But let me use a bit of an analogy that probably shows where we are. So every day, like a lot of people, I drive to work. And we have quite fast motorways in the UK. So when I was actually going to work before working from home, I was driving, let's say, 100 kilometers an hour down to my workplace. And earlier this year for my birthday, my wife bought me a track day. So I went down there, got into the Porsche Cayman. And what did I do? I drove the thing at 100 kilometers an hour around the track. And the reason being is because there's only one way I knew how to drive. And it wasn't until the person next to me, the race instructor, said, well, this is how you do it. Then I got it to perform. And I think this is a nice analogy of where we are with young people, because they're coming out with all these new talents, but I don't think it's the young people who've got a problem. I think it's us. We don't know how to train them differently. And it takes a whole new lot of skill sets. So I think the whole chalk and talk system that we're used to, where the lecturer stands up in front of the class and they're basically a godlike figure, that has to go out the window. And we have to recognize the lecturers will become more facilitators. We also have to build an educational base around it, more feel and do. We have to let these young people go out and experience it. And I know there's a lot of dialogue in the industry about whether we're too reliant on simulators, but this isn't something I think we should be worried about. Some 5 years ago, we had a British astronaut who was just preparing to go to space. Now, that individual, Tim Peake, some of you may know, he spent about 6 years training. So by the time he sat in that rocket, he was a fully well-trained individual. But the interesting thing is he was an astronaut, but never been to space. Now, if we put that into maritime environment, that means we could potentially train a very well-trained officer and actually never put them to sea. Now, we're not going to do that, but that shows the power of simulation and good quality training. And we know, we've been talking about digitalization. We know the age of command is going to come down. It's becoming less socially acceptable to spend a career at sea. And because of that, there will be certain knowledge gaps. So where I see automation and this new digitalization period is we can fill in those gaps. So we can say, okay, we can promote someone to captain at, let's say, mid-20s, late 20s, and we'll use automation to fix that gap. There's only one word of caution I would use, though, and that's about recruiting young people. And certainly when I started this job 10 years ago out in the Philippines, shipping was the most desirable job, and it was a way to get out of poverty. Now, with all these skills young people are coming up with, they don't have to go to sea to make a lot of money. And I'm going to use one example of YouTube stars. And you may have heard this term before, influencers. But now it's possible for someone to sit in their room, play a computer game, and make a lot more money than they're ever going to make at sea. I just, before I came on this panel discussion, I just had a quick look. My sons watched this silly video on YouTube called Roma and Diana Show, I think it's called. And it's basically some 4-year-olds playing with toys. I went on, and that channel alone is worth $234 million. So you can suddenly see that all these young people coming up with skills, we've got to remain competitive to make sure they come to the industry, which is a whole new challenge as well. So I've probably opened a can of worms there, but like I say, I think the young people coming up are exceptional high quality, and we need to recognize that. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with your thought, with what you said, because whenever people are telling me, I think there is an equal amount of training that is required for the people who are making those comments without actually, that they are not adjusting to the times, because as Sankalp mentioned about the attitude and aptitude aspect, a person's attitude and aptitude is also directly related to the way his mentor or his senior is dealing with him. So you bring out the best in people by the interactive approach that you may have on board. But thank you for that, Adam. We'll come back to that particular thing again in a bit. The next question is for Kathryn. In my introduction of the concept paper, it was mentioned to me by the organizers, and I also did the research on it, is that the pundits are predicting that the low-skilled workers will be the first to be at threat of being replaced by technology. Are we talking about ratings in the tech and engine department, who are the lowest in the current hierarchy? Can they be replaced by automation and digitization? Or are we looking at some other categories? Over to you.
No, it's a good question, actually, Captain. And I think we've discussed this in the UK for a long time around the board table. And one of the most important factors here is just because we're going to be automated doesn't mean to say that we have to lose a bunch of people, a bunch of seafarers. And those seafarers, you're talking about the ratings level, they are critical to an operation of a vessel. And I really do feel very strongly that we will continue to need those seafarers, regardless of what happens with technology. But I think what will happen is it will slightly, their skill set will slightly change. And I think what we'll see far more electronic engineer ratings and engineers required, because we're heading very much the way the automobile industry has headed and is heading and is continuing to develop, where things are all done by the push of a button. So, ships will probably end up going into dry docks for a day to have a quick service like a car and then come back out again. And it will all be done with this fully automated electronic system just to see how things are being monitored. And that's honestly how I see the future. So it's really important that we understand how that will impact on the skills of the seafarers currently so that we can prepare them better. So again, it's the challenge. How do we prepare them for a job that doesn't yet exist? So we have to start thinking out of the box and think a little bit further ahead on what we know now, and looking and building. And the problem is we struggle in the UK, and I'm sure Adam will probably vouch for this too. We struggle to attract electronic engineers into the business. And that's the shortage area that we're going to have a problem with. We're going to really struggle to find these electronic engineers. So we need to maybe start looking at changing the way we deliver our engineering programs to incorporate a little bit more of the electronic side. Small tweaks like that will make a difference initially. But I don't know. Going back to your original question, I do not think that we will just have a mass cull on ratings. I do not believe that for 1 minute.
Thank you, Kathryn. I think that's a very pertinent point, and I wanted to bring this out so that our colleagues who are here would also start thinking that it's not that the pecking order as it exists today will be the one that is affected. Skill sets need to be changed to keep with the times. You're absolutely right there. But the seamanship aspect, which was also alluded to by one of the other speakers, cannot be replaced by technology. Thank you. I'll move on to Rorotea now. As I mentioned earlier, Dorothy, I had the opportunity to hear Stephen Cotton at an event in India where we had invited him to speak at our alumni meet. I think it was 5, 7, 10 years ago. And he was talking about the future employment challenges and opportunities for seafaring profession as we know it today. As the global co-chair of ITF's Youth Committee, are the next wave of bright, tech-savvy young things who are coming up behind the millennials, are they ready to graduate and enter the world of work at sea? And what does the industry need to do to incentivize and attract the best talent for this profession? I think briefly you did touch upon it when your talk, but I would like you to stress upon it a little more. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. And my answer would be yes, absolutely yes. I do believe, or from my experience, my point of view is that the education of seafarers is also changing. So it is not the same today as it used to be 10 or 20 years ago. And that means that as much as possible, the universities or the schools, maritime schools, are preparing these seafarers as much as possible in these circumstances to deal with new circumstances, to learn new skills, and to be able to start the job in the circumstances we are right now. I do agree that both my previous speakers said we are all preparing for jobs which do not exist. But if I'm looking at my job or many other jobs, we are all doing something differently with years because just the environment we're working in is changing. And I think it's the same for seafarers. What is good for young seafarers is that they have been born in the digital era. So they started, as Adam explained with his son, they started from the first year of their lives, they start learning some skills that we didn't, or even older seafarers never will. And that is crucial. So it will be much easier for them to adapt to new technologies. Even while technologies are changing, it will be easier for them. But what we must make sure is that they have the opportunity to reskill. They have the opportunity to, for example, I know from the past that there already were some positions on board the ship that do not exist anymore. And what happened, for example, in Croatia is that those seafarers, most of them changed their position on board the ship. They took some courses, they go to school for maybe a year or so, and they changed. So they had a new career, but it also was on board the ship. And that's something that might happen in future. I also agree that seafarers, traditional seafarers, will always be needed. I just believe that they will have to have a little bit more experience in some different, for example, technology era. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Dorothea. Moving on to Sankalp. Sankalp, apart from running a successful business for one of the leading ship management companies of the world, you are also closely involved within the industry collaboration with the seafarers representatives and the administration to help improve the training capabilities within the country. I will rephrase the question that I had asked Adam earlier and ask you primarily in the Indian context at current times. If the overall training standards are lagging behind the market requirements for seafarers, then how are the cadets and trainees being trained to suit the present and future needs for the market? The second aspect of this question is, do we need to introduce certain skill set at the selection stage, or should we be delivering that training to them on electronics or technology or whatever? So over to you.
Yes, thank you for your question. I've always felt that the initial or the pre-sea training, whether it concerns a cadet or a trainee seaman, is the basic skill set that you need to impart to a seafarer. A pre-sea training institute is an institute where seafarers go in, they understand the basics of shipping. It is not that they are going to be ready with the entire skill set of being prepared to 100% go out at sea. Now, while saying that, I thought it was a very Indian thing, where I heard it from my seniors that during our days it used to be this way, and during when I became a senior and the juniors came, maybe even I said it, during my days things were right. I hear it now when people come to my office and they say that during their days things were much better and now the training has fallen through. I don't think that is actually the case. I think there is quality training that is available. There are institutes, reputed institutes, that are training really well. But what is very, very important is that it should be supplemented with a robust shipboard training. Now, a part of the training that is given ashore is imparting the basic skills. Thereafter, you need to make sure that when the seafarer, when the trainee, whether it be a cadet or a seaman, he goes on board the ship, you need to have a competency management system that is robust enough to give him training in the various practical training in the various aspects out at sea, so that going forward, it makes sure that he's a proper officer or a proper rating. And in saying so, it is very, very important that companies need to have a strong cadet base. That means they need to have an induction program where they induct cadets and trainee ratings. I personally, from my experience, have seen that boys who have joined my company as cadets and who are masters and chief engineers today, also trainee seamen who joined us quite a few years back, who are sailing today as bosuns or have subsequently become fitters and pumpmen, the quality that they have to offer to the company, the standard of seafaring that they have, the safety culture that they bring about is much better than what we have taken from the market. So the answer to the question is shore-based training, very, very good basic skill training for the seafarers. I'm not saying it is not available. It is available at good institutes. And that is what we as an industry have in fact promoted here in India. We have done our own audits, our own analysis as to which institutes are actually cutting the edge. And once seafarers are selected from these institutes, they should be put through a robust onboard training, because onboard training cannot be replaced by onshore training. Practical training is key to making sure that you have a skilled seafarer. Also very important is the mentoring process on board the ship. Shipping has been an industry where mentoring traditionally has been the way of teaching and learning. That needs to continue, and that is what the new generation needs to understand, that mentoring of seafarers or their juniors is a part of their job profile. They are not doing it additional. They're not doing a favor, but it is their job profile and it needs to continue. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sankalp. That was very insightful. Before I'll just take a follow-on question very briefly. I don't want you to. I just want you to take your to clarify on that. When Belal was talking, he mentioned about what the current status is, that there is a reduced sea time. Now, in terms of mentoring and on-the-job training that you alluded to as being one of the vital aspects, do you think this reduced sea time is the way forward? I know it's being practically done because STCW requires a minimum amount of onboard training. Do you think that it can actually work in favor of the industry, putting the costs of onboard training of 24 months and 18 months aside and reducing to 12 months? What is your take on that?
Sir, to be very honest and to be very practical, I mean, we all are running ships today, and what is happening, like traditionally, when for the longest time, the sea time requirement in India for say the deck side was 33 or 36 months sea time out at sea, and that's when you were actually eligible to come and give your second mate's exam. Now that has slowly come down to 18 months. And what are we doing now? Boys, they complete their sea time in 18 months. They come give their exams. Are they joining directly as third officers, like how we used to directly join as third officers after we completed our 33 or 36 month sea time? That is no longer the case. Now, even after a person gets his COC, after he's completed his 18 months, after he's completed his second mates, he still goes for at least half a tenure as a trainee nautical officer, where he's still understudying the third officer to take over duties from the third officer. I do not feel that we should compromise on the practical shipboard training by reducing the sea time, because the kind of training that a seafarer gets on board the ship, like I said, you can put them through how many simulators that you want. You can put them through how many ever more months you want them ashore, but it will not give the same kind of skill set. That's my view of it, and I very strongly stand by that.
Thank you, Sankalp. I think we'll come back to that later if we have the time. I'm mindful that we have 30 minutes left, and I have one last question for our keynote speaker. We save the best for the last. And as the saying goes, beauty before age. So all the beautiful people have finished speaking. Now we have the elderly people speak. Belal, in your capacity as chairman of IMEC, which boasts of approximately 250 member companies from across all continents, you have the visibility and information from all the seafarer supply countries. From your perspective, what initiatives are countries taking to ensure generations of better quality seafarers pool enabled for the future? And is there any kind of a race between countries to prove their training standards are better than the other? I know it's a provocative question. Perhaps it will invoke questions from the other listeners over here, but I'd like you to share your thoughts on that, please. Thank you. You are muted. Your microphone is muted, Belal. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Rajesh. I think this is not only provocative, it is a very complex question, because it involves a global perspective. And before I go into answering your questions, one of the things that we do discuss quite often is the end user. Going back to what Captain Sankalp was saying, we are the end users. So when the product is not good or product is not what we need, what do? We do the training ourselves. So what was not conceivable about 30-40 years ago, that shipping companies never had their own training center. Today, almost all big shipping companies have their own training center, and those training centers are evolving. More money is spent on training centers than sometimes government sponsored colleges and institutes. Why? Because we find that the officers that is coming out having certificates needed additional training in order to be ready to work on today's ships. So that being said, going back to what you were asking, there is a difference between major labor supply countries, or where the officers are coming from: Philippines, India, Ukraine, Russia, Romania, and some other countries, and Croatia as well, but not as much as other countries. We have seen recently that with insistence and feedback from IMEC, Philippines has changed their education requirement for cadets going into academy to start their academic process. So it used to be 10-year education, it became 12. And as Adam was saying, that suddenly he can see much better quality cadets coming into the system. Why has Philippine government done that? Because they felt that with the previous requirement, they could not follow up, or the boys could not actually absorb the education needed for them to be ready to go to sea. I'll just take a break. What Adam was saying, that I think much of his enthusiasm was coming from his 3-year-old son playing with iPad. But having said that, this is true that all the younger cadets that coming into Philippines are very well educated, very interested in IT, and we know that same as is happening in India, in the Philippines, a lot of boys are given straight away tablets and how to work, get the knowledge. Everything from one place rather than running one end to the other end of the library to find the right books and the right contents to study. With regard to India, again, I think I would like to go back what I was saying. In context of IMO and STCW, we know that it lags far behind, as Kathryn was saying before. We can never depend on STCW because of his nature of having all members to agree for a change. It takes time, but the shipping is moving faster, especially as I was mentioning in my speech in the beginning, that it is moving faster than ever before. And I don't believe the educational requirement from STCW will ever catch up, which means that we as a shipping companies will probably end up taking the burden of training our seafarers to be ready, and we need to have that. Our budget for training probably need to be increased rather than ever considering to reduce. Now, different countries have a different perspective. I don't believe that there is a kind of competition. I think each country has their own values. So we know the value provided by the Philippines today and the value provided by India or Russian seafarers or Ukrainian seafarers. I think the people who are the end users, we know who provides what value, and that is reflected when you look at the profile of a tanker or a container ship or a bulk carrier. There is a different sets of crew, different sets of nationality predominates. Now, end of the day, some of these countries do realize that if they need to go to specialized vessels, they need to have officers at entry level who are smarter, who are more educated, and who can understand and absorb the education needed to run those ships. I think that is the competition that might be coming. So why don't we have a certain nationality? We shouldn't be naming them. Do not have officers, for example, on an LNG vessel or on a specialized tanker vessel. Why do you have certain nationality dominating a bulk carrier? Now that's why the national governments need to look at and say what we need to do in order at entry-level boys to be on a higher skill set before we allow them to embark in this profession. Another thing I think we should all bear in mind, in every single country, the primary, secondary, and junior college level education is being transformed. A lot of IT and software related education is used not only to provide traditional contents, but in order to make them ready for when they're ready to take a job and be ready. So on the first day in an office, you're sitting in front of a computer and you are asked to start working, and if you are not used to it, you just are not fit. So those education, even outside maritime, it is being provided by the government in their own institute. What the marine academies around the world or the seafarers education system around the world need to do is to ensure that we don't fall back and we enhance those training and bring them into those education institutions where we are training our cadets. So in a nutshell, I think this is evolving. The nationals who, as I mentioned, need to look at their own quality of the seafarers and not to look at the competition. But I think going back to what Captain Sankalp was saying with regard to mentoring and with regard to sea time, I think I am in his sector, shall I say, but I have been convinced over the years to get out of that concept and allow more simulated approach or simulator based approach to reduce the sea time. I have never been in favor, but I think I have to say that Adam will probably not agree, because I know what his sentiments are, is that you cannot tie up a younger generation to say you need to do 3 years sea time. Simply doesn't work. I mean, you are doing 36 months. I think I did 48 months. So the thing is, so in order to attract the younger generation, you cannot tie them up for a period that they just said, I can't do this. And in the video that Adam was showing, you could see how young people in a shore-based job, how many times or how frequently they change job. If they are not happy, they go to another one. If they are not happy, they go to another one. And it's not their fault. This is what it is. This is what today's generation is all about. Now, we need to work hard to keep our junior officers into the sea, because it is not an office job. We have to spend a lot of money, a lot of time to train them, and they must be given, what is your problem? Tell me. You don't want to do 3 years? Okay, we'll do 2 years, but you have to do 6 months of simulator training. That kind of thing as an incentive to keep them where we need them to be. And that is why the technology comes and say, we don't need to do manual sounding that we did 2 hours in the morning to sound all the tanks. It's not needed anymore. You save time. So there are things that is happening today that is not, you don't need to do manual plotting on a radar because it's all done for you. So Captain Sankalp, I am with you, but I'm not with you at the same time in the long run to say that we really need to look at the today's generation and give them what they want, rather than we push them to a corner and say, you must do this. Next thing you see, he's just gone. He left the sea life and he went to do something else. So I may have drifted a little bit from the question that was initially asked, but I think I might have addressed that. Thank you, Captain Tandon.
Thank you, Belal. Thank you very much. I think, yes, you did address the thing. I'm mindful of the time, so I will very soon invite Shaukat onto the screen. But just one comment on what you mentioned about Adam not agreeing with what we said. I remember in the last discussion I had with Adam, we were talking about attention span. The attention span of an individual in 2000 was said to be 12 seconds. Today it is 8 seconds. So I can perhaps understand that the attention span of a millennial or the baby boomers is far lesser than what we had. So yeah, I kind of agree with you and not agree with you as well. So we'll leave it at that and pick it up later on. My good friend Mr. Abdul Ghani Serang has always been on the forerunner of raising questions, etc. So I think he had raised his hand. If he is still around, Shaukat, can you bring him on, give him a mic and get him on stage and let him have his the 20 seconds of attention, and then we will, and I think once I hear the question, I will decide who will answer that. I won't answer it, that's for sure. So can we get Mr. Abdul Ghani Serang on the screen, please?
Yes, we're trying to get Mr. Abdul Ghani Serang if he's still around, and we're trying to get him on the screen on stage. Meanwhile, would like to thank all of you for a wonderful session, wonderful, and we've had a very large viewership over Facebook Live. And one little thing I wanted to mention is I sort of disagree to a comment which Sankalp made, and he said Captain Tandon being his guru. So I disagree, because, and he seems to have a copyright as the way he said it. There isn't anybody in the industry who cannot say this, that Captain Tandon has not been his guru. Even I am sitting here, he's been my guru as well. So it's not just he's only your guru. So do we have,
I just said it that he's my guru. So you should have said it as well.
Okay. Thank you, Sankalp. I think in the interest of time, while we try and get technology to get Mr. Abdul Ghani, there was a question he had posted on the chat. Adam, would you like to take that, please?
Yeah, I can take that one.
Oh. I'm sorry to interrupt. Whenever, sir, you feel free, Captain Tandon, sir. Whenever you are okay, then we've got some questions from the audience as well. So I'll hand them over to you.
Okay, fair enough. So we'll take that question first that was there that Adam had picked up. Industry needs to put their money where their mouth is. Is that the one we're talking about, Adam?
Yeah, I can take that
please.
one. So the questions come through from Abdul Ghani about, while some companies have training modules and budgets, how do we stop those companies poaching seafarers who have skills without investing on their training? Now, this is quite a interesting question for IMEC, because all of our training department started from quite an open discussion, I think back in 2008, before I joined, about what the future of manning is. And this was after the ICS BIMCO manpower report came out to show that there was a shortage of seafarers. And there was a number of people in that room, and everyone was quite open to say that if there wasn't a solution, they would have to poach. And that was, like I say, quite an open discussion about where we go from here. So there was a solution, and the solution was collaboration, which for IMEC at the time, I think it's about 100 members, 250 members now, is quite easy to do. So I think this is one solution because, okay, not all companies are the same, but not all companies can be the same. And if I look at our cadet program in the Philippines, we have companies utilizing our cadets who have got multi-million-pound training centers. And I've got other companies who really care about their cadets and always go and visit their cadets. But without the cadet program, wouldn't be able to take on cadets. They just haven't got the budgets because they have 2 or 3 ships. So I think the first answer is collaboration. I think we need to stop looking at everything on a company basis, and we need to work together as a whole industry. The other thing I would add is transparency. And I've sat in a number of conferences where social media's come up, and a lot of companies are really scared about their seafarers using social media. But we've been quite open on this discussion, talking about the new generation and about how they're new, how they've got IT skills. So my recommendation, excuse me, would be to really let the seafarers use these social media platforms to promote what you do, because now we're going into a whole level of transparency, and young people don't have to sit back and just look at the glossy magazines and let the company tell them what they want to tell them. Now they can go on things like Instagram, YouTube, and hear the stories from seafarers themselves. So I've written down a thing here that I keep reading in business books about doing the right thing is always good for business. So I think if you are doing the right thing, you are investing in training, let your seafarers tell that story, and that story will be projected out. And the only other thing I was going to add about collaboration, and Belal mentioned it about different countries, about one isn't so dominant as another. To use an example, I speak with Kathryn probably at least on a monthly basis. Now, 10 years ago, we would have probably been competitors because Kathryn's obviously promoting the British seafarers, I'm promoting the Filipinos. But that I would agree with Belal that competition isn't there anymore. What we want is the best quality seafarers per se. And by collaborating with different organizations and obviously different social partners, we work with unions a lot, I think we can bring this base level of education up, not on a company-to-company basis, but of a whole industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. I think that's very succinctly put, and I hope it answers Mr. Abdul Ghani's question, if he is indeed listening.
If he's there on stage now.
Okay. So, Abdul Ghani, does that answer your question?
Yes, definitely. And the collaboration part is a key to the success of this whole training module. And transparency, you did mention. Thank you. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Abdul Ghani ji. Okay, Shaukat, I'll hand over to you now if you can go through the questions, and then we will see who's best placed to take them. We have 15 minutes to go before the end of the session. And after the end of the question and answer session, all the speakers and panelists may please go back to backstage, because there is a surprise that Shaukat, he has told me, is there for us. So over to you, Shaukat.
Right, so some very interesting questions have come in, and I'm just using my discretion to just put forward at least 5 to 6 questions to you. One is, sir, I had a question, and if I may be allowed to ask one question, I don't know who can answer this, but I've been noticing, and because I deal with a lot of, I interact with a lot of senior masters and senior chief engineers and senior people ashore as well as on board, and I've been noticing in the last 3 to 4 years, the complaint against seafarers of the present generations have got down. Previously, senior masters, senior chief engineers used to complain a lot about the quality of the seafarers. So now that their complaints have visibly gone down, is this a determinant of the training standards rising, or better training skills, being handled in the institutes?
I will take that one, because which year we are talking about masters in 2015 to 2018. And again, at the risk of sounding boring, when I was at sea, I had the same comments made about us when we were cadets in 75, 76. So in short, the answer to that is, the older I get, the better I was. Now, if you analyze the statement, the older I get, the better I was. I think that that answers that question. But on a more serious note, skill sets have changed. The skill sets have to change with the change in the dynamic nature of our industry. The education systems are evolving in every location, and I think it's only natural human tendency that people start comparing everybody with themselves, and of course everybody has a very high opinion about themselves. So I may be generalizing here, but the quality is all dependent on the seniors who are mentoring and training the people on board. So people have to look at the mirror and say, am I doing a good job in training him and bringing him up to the standard I expect from him? Does that answer your question, Shaukat? Thank you.
Yes, sir, absolutely, absolutely, yes. And then I'll go into one line question which we had from, I think, fellow seafarer. He's saying, is the seafaring industry transiting from to get from seafarer to e-farer?
Good one. Dorothy, would you like to take that one?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. And I would say no, but the seafarers today or seafarers in the near future will or must have some new skills, which includes e-learning or e-skills, or we can call them in any other way. But we will always need traditional skills, also traditional learning, because we all know that it is amazing what we can do, for example, online, but then we can lose the connection and then we'll need to do everything again as we used to do before. So yes, something will change. There will be much more things that we need to do, but it won't become only e-farer. But I'll definitely like the way that was presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. I think that was a fantastic response, and I also must compliment the person who said seafarer to e-farer. I'll also remember that for future times when I have to speak.
4 बजे NMDC का मीटिंग
अच्छा
सर
जाता है ये मीटिंग आपने देखा वही में
okay, Abdul Ghani is
Abdul Ghani ji, please mute your microphone.
Sorry.
Yes, Shaukat, over to you. Shaukat, I can't hear you. Yes.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, another interesting question, and this has also come from, I think, a senior seafarer saying that current maritime training is considered to be more reactive than proactive. Why?
I think harsh as it may sound, that is a reality. I mean, every time there has been a serious maritime incident or a disaster, new regulation has come about, new training has come about. I think with the change in the technology and the digitalization of our industry, it is an opportunity for us now to be ahead of the game rather than lag behind on the thing. So I think it is for the Gen Next people like Adam, Dorothy, Sankalp, and several others like them, you yourself, Shaukat, who need to take the lead and bring about certain changes where we are doing preemptive training rather than being reactive. Adam, perhaps I think I'll ask Kathryn to step in and comment on that further.
Thank you, Rajesh. Yes, I was just thinking out loud to myself that actually what we need to do is we need to do, as you say, be more proactive. But I really do feel that that's where we need to move away from the importance of STCW and start developing training that's non-STCW. So it links in quite, I think we put far too much emphasis, although STCW is critically important. As I said previously, it's a basic level. So we need to then move away and start developing our own training to meet the needs of the industry that's outside STCW.
I think very well said, Kathryn. And I will just take, I think this also answers to a certain extent Abdul Ghani's question about poaching, etc. If we have a collaborative approach from industry and the Seafarers group to develop these training programs, I think we will be better placed to minimize the incidents and accidents in the long run. So maybe we can take this up offline, Sankalp, you and I, and perhaps some of the other people in India, at least we can take it up. At the international level, as we all know, there is a lot of collaborative initiatives between the ITF and IMEC that are there. Within IMEC and the other labor supply locations like Philippines, there are efforts underway which are very collaborative and very successful. But are we going enough on the non-STCW? Maybe we need to look at that. Thank you. Over to you, Sir Shaukat, for our next question.
Right, sir. I wanted to ask you one thing, sir, and this question was one of the best questions we've received during the day. And since in this, the whole event over 2 days, we'll be talking about a lot of concurrent issues which overlap each other. I will put forward this question. I think, sir, it's a very interesting question which we had in the last session. And that is, somebody asked, we are only talking about training on seafarers and future skills of seafarers. Why aren't we talking of the training of the people who train the seafarers equally as much as we are talking about the seafarers training? Who will train the seafarers the way they needed to be trained? So this is one question which I had from the last session. And I'm trying to, and one more question which I got from this session is, training programs for non-conventional vessels. There's a huge lack of programs in the industry at present. What is being done at that level?
I think I must compliment the person who asked for this question about the people who train people. I had that question down amongst the 500 questions that I had written down, but didn't ask because of paucity of answering that one. Training of people ashore, trainers, and the people who are responsible for the performance of the shipboard people. What is your view on that, Belal? Belal?
Sir, I think he's having some issue with his audio. So maybe we can, for the time being, switch over to somebody else, and then meanwhile I'll check his.
I think as an operator over here, Sankalp, perhaps you want to give it a shot to take that one.
Yeah, I think what is vital is that to firstly understand who would be a good trainer. Now, what is traditionally happening is that in the training institute, we have people who go out at sea, either when they are on holiday, they decide that, okay, they're going to come into the institute and actually, train. But with my experience, like we have in our organization, we have LNG simulator based training. And what we did is it's a global training. It's carried out not only for Indian seafarers, it's carried out for seafarers across the globe. And a lot of other companies also use our training center for the simulator training for the LNG. What we did was that we said that we need a trainer who's able to actually, whose passion is training, whose passion is teaching, who's able to actually, retain attention of the students, who's actually able to reach out to the students and teach them in a way that they can understand. It was a process that took very, very long for us to identify the right trainer. It took us nearly close to around 12 to 13 interviews. So what is very important in identifying the right trainer is how well is he able to grab the attention of the subject student being seafarers. How well is he able to explain the subject matter to them in an easy manner, and not just PowerPoint presentations or talking, but how much can he get them involved practically. So going forward, it is important that the trainers who are going to actually do training of seafarers when it comes to future skills needs to be people who for whom training is a passion, who are actually able to grab the attention of the seafarers, and that is the way forward. The traditional trainers who so long have been doing training on PowerPoint are not the future trainers. That is very, very clear.
Thank you, Sankalp. And I would like to add over here to what Sankalp said is we have a group of very committed trainers here who have formulated what is called the Maritime Trainers Guild, wherein trainers are participating and they are having sessions with training institutes, with maritime administrations, to enhance examining skills, training skills, etc. That is at a very macro level being done. I think the convener of that Maritime Trainers Guild was a speaker in the first session in the morning. addition to that, for information of others over here, FOSMA has embarked on a skill development and enhancement program for the faculties in our two institutions in Calcutta and New Delhi. And that is a focused, itemized skill set development wherein experts will sit in the classroom, observe the training skills, and work on a one-on-one skill development program that is already started in our institutes. I know Adam has been leading something similar for the Philippines, but I'll give it over to Adam now to please speak briefly about the trainer program in Philippines.
Yes, thank you, Rajesh. So our history of upgrading trainers in the Philippines goes back about 10 years. And we started a study with a British university back then. And what we found is that actually Filipino lecturers are extremely knowledgeable. But the problem was, how do they interact in the classroom? So we've started a new collaboration with Solent University to start training or train the trainers for Filipino lecturers. And what we want is, we almost want to break this hierarchy. So I referred earlier to the old chalk and talk system, where traditionally, the lecturer, it might be a captain, might be a former chief engineer, is known as the expert of all knowledge. And that hierarchy now with young students has disappeared. So what we're trying to do is create a new learning environment, so trainers can sort of adapt to the new skills of these new young people much better. So rather than just resting on their laurels of being a former expert, they're a lot more engaging, in their approach, and then can build a much more collaborative training environment, whether it be online or in a classroom. So that's one thing we're working with at the moment. And I fully agree with some of the comments here about how we've got to change the learning environment. We've got to move away from this PowerPoint environment to something that young people can adapt to a lot more. So we're slowly and surely changing the culture out there, and hopefully this will be something we can roll out to other countries as well.
Thank you, Adam. And I think, Shaukat, we have run out of time. If you do want, maybe we can take just one more question. Otherwise, you can take over and conclude the proceedings. Over to you.
Yes, very good, sir. I wanted to put forward to you one statement which has come, and maybe this is not directly related to this particular session, but it gives food for thought. And this is a wonderful statement, question, or however way we put it. It says, during the COVID times, a lot has changed, and the ship's contours regarding of how people can go out of their way to help each other and respond to SOS messages also on ships, and to go and maybe go into another country, another flag. How does this? Is there any kind of SOP from the government or administration which tells a vessel's master how to treat these domains? And is there any regulation regarding, because of the pandemic going on and restrictions and quarantine processes in all the other countries? So I think I just wanted to put this to you, and maybe we can write something, and I will put it in the report, sir.
Okay, I think let's take this one offline, because it's a very, very specific and focused kind of a comment come question. We can certainly discuss and deliberate, and we can take it up offline and address and try to give a answer which would be perhaps half acceptable, because writing SOPs is a reactive process to anything new that comes about. And it will require a lot of thought, some reading of and understanding of the various variables involved, and then only we'll be able to come up. I hope that answers your question.
Right, sir. Absolutely, yes. And what I will do, what I've been saying in the other sessions as well, sir, that there are all these questions I will invariably be giving to all the participants, because it's come from this session. And if you can take time, anytime within your convenience, if you can take time to put an answer, then I will put this all in the report in the question answer we are releasing. We will be releasing as part of the report a full question answer documentary of what questions have been raised during the sessions and what questions have been answered. And as promised in the FSM, that since we have so eminent personalities, stalwarts like all of you here, then the report and the summary which will be made will be presented to the Government of India Shipping Ministry as well as the IMO. And now I would like to take this opportunity to personally thank Captain Tandon and Captain Belal for the keynote address, Captain Tandon and Kathryn, Nielsen, Adam Lewis, Sankalp Shukla, and Rorotea. I think this has been a real value addition to the learning of the present generation, as well as the people who are very senior and who are out at sea, and also for people who are based ashore. In a normal conventional event, this is the time when the people were presented mementos, but I will promise you that there is something going, and that is the surprise which I want to say, and that there's something going, and it will reach you in due course of time, and this will be a memento for your participation in the FSM. So, and thanks, Captain Tandon, sir, for finishing the session on time. We have Ocean Technologies in the next session. Ral Harris, most of you must be knowing him. He's the creative director of Ocean Technologies. He's been given 1 hour. He's going to present on behalf of Ocean Technologies, the new technologies that mariners will see in the future, and he will bring forward Videotel, Marlins, and Seagull together with him. So I would also suggest and request you to also participate in that. And while you leave, we will also ask you to just visit our ARI booth and also HSBC. Most of you are already premier customers of HSBC, and they have supported the event. So ARI, Ocean Technologies, and HSBC have got their booths in the arena. If you can just go and say and take a table there and say hi, hello. Other than that, it is Captain Shaukat Mukherjee from the Naval Connection thanking all of you. Namaste. And as we prepare to end this session, we couldn't be more thankful than you've come and spend your time. You've spent not only time here, you've spent time for the dry runs, and I understand all of you have extremely busy schedules, and thank you so much for your engagement that you bring in for making FSM, and we are branding this as maritime industry's largest global event on future skills. So sir, with your agreement and with your confirmation, it will be time to end this session. If there is nothing, then I want to go offline and we'll meet at the backstage. So thank you very much, and hold on, we will meet in the backstage.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for participating. We'll see you offline. Thank you very much.